Welcome to Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah. So glad to have you with us. Today is the summer finale of Fit to Speak, and we will have more about that, as well as several new initiatives that we'll be launching. That's coming up at the end of the show, but first, we'll continue the conversation that we had in last month's edition of the program about mass shootings in America with Common Sense Entertainment creative director Raheem Dawodu Jr. In the context of the racially motivated top shooting in Buffalo, New York, I asked Raheem as to whether or not certain states banning books and certain states banning the teaching of critical race theory was a contributing factor.
I think you're right. I think that there's something very regressive when you're talking about burning books. That's like stuff that you saw in like the Great West of America, and those periods when the church was controlling things like any towns, or what the Catholic Church was doing when they were like the most powerful body in Europe for many years during the Holy Roman Empire. That's like the stuff that they were doing back then, burning books and saying you can't learn about these different things because not because it's not true, it's just you don't want to teach about it, and that ignorance will lead to a generation of or generations of people that aren't going to learn the entire history of the way this country operates. It's like if you tomorrow these states were like, yeah, we're banning reading, what's going to happen? You're going to have a whole generation of people that that can't read. And when you're saying that, and then you can say, well, you go to college for this, and you'll figure it out. But most Americans don't go to college, so where are they going to get a greater balance of information from? There isn't one out there, and that's a very, very like dangerous route this country's like going on, where we're saying that we're not going to educate you on the entire history, not for any reason other than we don't want you to know this stuff. And it's funny too, because you see that a great example of this happening in this country is we don't learn about, for instance, like the labor movement in this country. Like we think that the 8-hour days was granted to us by these companies and so forth. They were just very much like, hey, you work 8 hours and 5 days a week now, when that was really like a really like bloody, very violent fight between workers and companies to get to the point where we're working just 40 hours a day for 5 days a week. That was not a thing that was granted towards us. And having children not work at these mills or whatever, that's something that had to be fought for as well. And I say that because that's not taught to us, and a lot of schools you have to learn that as you get older. The great like labor efforts. So when you see that over time, that's been erased. You can clearly see where things are going if you say, hey, we're not going to teach you all about how race has like really impacted the direction of this country, and how like these actions of racism led to this and so forth. That's the route we're going on. When you look at how the labor movement in this country is never really discussed in school except for like short blurbs, and we don't even celebrate May Day, for instance, in this country, whereas other countries around the world do. That's the impact of that. That's what happens when schools are saying that you can't learn these things, and that's where things are going. Where you have that, and then you start reducing people's history, you start ignoring stuff, or you start learning alternative histories, which is incorrect, and full of unfactual things, but that becomes the fact, unfortunately, and you end up with generations of people that are ignorant on what's actually happening in this country. It's a very, very precarious place we're in right now. I'm not sure. I really want to be positive and hope that hope that something like the internet, for instance, is a great way for people to really, really learn stuff. But as we're seeing, we mentioned earlier with the 4chans and 8chans and so forth, people are also running there to learn the wrong things as well. So I'm not sure. I always just go back to me, always the answer is like we got to improve people's like livelihoods. People aren't going to fall susceptible to this stuff if they feel like the life isn't falling apart around them, which a lot of people are feeling that type of strain right now. And I think that's like the best thing you can do is just try to um, uplift people out of like the situations that they're in. And until we start doing that, you're going to start seeing people finding something to be angry at because they're not where they think they're supposed to be. So that's what I always like fall back on is we need to like start really working as a nation to uplift people's situations. So they feel comfortable and they feel satisfied in the work they're doing, and they're able to make the best amount of money, and they're able to now like say, well, I don't really care about white replacement theory because I'm pretty comfortable in my life right now. I'm making enough money to not struggle. That's where always things come back to.
I think that when we look at some of this stuff, fear
Hmm.
seems to be the driver for some of these things. The fear of a changing country. And we talked about that about a year ago, actually, with the census numbers.
Yep.
We're seeing, what's been going on with these census numbers. And some folks are trying to hang on to, I guess, the previous version, a very different America than the America that's coming up as of now.
Yep.
Especially when you see some of the younger generation and everything else becoming much more aware of these issues that we're discussing on this program. And I do think that education is very, very important, and having, of course, discussions like these are very important as well. And you pretty much answered pretty much the final question that I had for this segment. But as we know, of course, every time there is a mass shooting, whether this was motivated by race or replacement theory or whatever else, we always see the president, no matter who it is, they visit the site, they lay the flowers, thoughts and prayers, all sorts of things. But there's no real action
Yep.
as
Yep.
such.
Yep.
I mean, like, and I think about the other thing too when I was preparing for this. I think about Sandy Hook, what
Yeah.
happened there in Connecticut,
Hmm.
and if having little children, elementary school children, being killed was not enough to move the needle on meaningful gun control in this country, then sadly, having 10 adults killed in a supermarket, I don't know, man. What do we do about this? What do we do? There's a lot of inertia here. Yes, I mean, I know we have a Second Amendment, but how do we, you answered some of this already, but again, in thinking about this, how do we move the needle in this country? Or can we?
Yeah, it's a hard question, man. Like, that's actually something I meant to say earlier. It's funny how like we are focusing on something like replacement theory and Tucker Carlson and all the stuff because no one wants to admit that we can't do anything about gun control, gun violence in this country. No one wants to admit that. That's why we start fighting these other battles about, oh, you can't say this, and what we do about Tucker Carlson and things of this sort. And don't get me wrong, like he's not like he's saying heinous things, and there's this growing white nationalist movement that's going on in this country that we've been seeing the last pretty much since like Ruby Ridge in the 90s. But no one wants to talk about gun control. there's no that's done. Like we feel like the same way we say other things are settled law, I feel like people are like, yeah, gun control is settled. There's nothing we can do about it. I think Sandy Hook, and then I forgot the school in Florida, unfortunately, because it's been a lot of them. But the school in Florida is Marjorie Stone.
Yeah.
Where it happened there, Virginia Tech.
Oh yeah.
I was in school when Virginia Tech happened. Even me and you from the DC area when the DC sniper was going around
All right.
and shooting people and stuff. These things have really exploded, and not just right wing stuff, but just gun violence in general has really exploded in this nation the last 30, 35 years or so. And it's funny because crime in general was you see the stuff about crime going up across the country and stuff, and crime actually isn't going up. It's not going up at all. But what is rising is gun violence, it's murder, it's things are stuff that's always been trending upwards because we're not doing anything about gun control in this country. We've kind of given up on that battle. What can be done? It really does take an engaged citizenry to really start holding people to the fire. But a lot of people unfortunately are like, well, it's done and we can't do anything about it. And we can't have that attitude. We can't just give up on this battle because when you saw the stories last week of people that were killed in that grocery store in Buffalo, and you saw all these people that were you going back to get cake for your birthday party and end up getting gunned down in a grocery store, that shouldn't happen, or hiding in the freezer just so someone doesn't go in and see you in the house so they don't kill you. That's not the way you're supposed to be living, and that's something that when you can get harmed in the store like that on a regular Saturday, that's something that should in the back of every American's mind, that could happen to me, even if regardless of your race, that could happen to me because it's a very. I mean, I was just in the store a little bit earlier. You know what I mean? That could happen to any of us if that's the case. And the answer isn't to bring more guns and have some Wyatt Earp versus Wyatt Earp shootout at high noon or whatever. There's some real dark American fantasy of that happening. These things aren't real. That didn't happen, and these things aren't real. What happens is that you end up getting injured or hurt or something through gun violence. So we have to find a real solution to this, and the real solution is that we have to ask people, say enough is enough. This is over. I'm tired of this. I'm not having more guns isn't going to solve anything. It's actually making things much worse. But until people are engaged and are thinking like that, our politicians are going to keep having the excuse that they can't do anything about it.
It's tough. It's tough because the other thing that really is also talked about is that, and you mentioned this earlier on, is really the bad guy, the whole bad guy with a gun, that the good guy with a gun, that the good guy with a gun will stop a bad guy with a gun, but then in this instance,
cartoon, it's so it's like some Looney Tunes vision of them thinking they're like Captain America or something, where they'll be able to stop the bad guy with a gun, and what ends up happening is a police officer comes in and sees two people with a gun and thinks that boom, you're both bad, and boom, you're dead. That's the stupidest thing ever. But there's this real dumb American fantasy that they'll be able to shoot somebody with a gun. It's so beyond stupid. I can't even really I can't
because
even express it.
Right, because there was an officer. I think it was working security off duty in this top shooting.
Yep.
And sadly he died. And if you look back at some of the other, multiple, sadly in this country, mass shootings, even though I remember Columbine, back in 1999, there was, I think a security guard, there or something like that.
Same thing with Marjorie Stoneman in Florida, same thing.
Yeah. So we have to put an end to this kind of, stuff where it's the good guy with a gun, will stop a bad guy with a gun. It's just kind of, crazy to me.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. When you are in a situation where if somebody's shooting like that, your immediate thought isn't I'm going to confront them with fire. Your immediate thought's I gotta run and save my life and save those around me. That's why that whole theory is so ridiculous. That's not how humans work. Humans, it's what is it? Fight or
flight. Exactly.
Yeah, fight or flight, yeah. And most people are gonna flight and run off because no one wants to engage in that. Why that doesn't make any sense. So it's the stupidest thing.
Right. And already you have this kind of sort of bystander effect. You see this happening, it just
Yeah,
entered my
yeah,
mind with, like sometimes, like say on Metro, which has been failing miserably over the, these last, several months with COVID and everything, if somebody needed help or whatever, you have most people just kind of sort of, sitting or standing there, whether it's on the platform or on the train, and things. Um, so already you have that bystander effect as it is, but then that whole fight or flight stuff here, in terms of, oh, do I get involved? Do I not? I mean,
most people are gonna run away from it, and they should, because it's a dangerous situation that you're not trained to encounter. But there's this dumb made up cowboy, and it's all made up because cowboys weren't the way we pick cowboys in this country is not what really happened. But there's this whole dumb made up cowboy. I'm gonna I'm the big man. I'm gonna go ahead and confront them myself. Thing that people have built up in them that they would, but that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So having more guns. And most people get guns not to do that. They get guns so they could either show it off, play around with, or they can go hunt. This is not I'm going to kill somebody with a gun. That's never in most people's minds. So it's so beyond stupid. But unfortunately, like, it's fixated in a lot of our brains that if we were ever to get in a situation and we had a gun, we would take down this shooter. And you have trained, like you mentioned earlier, you have trained police officers and so forth, or retired police officers. And not in the case of Buffalo, they actually confronted the guy and tried
right.
his best to stop him and ended up getting killed. But a lot of other cases, they run away because, yeah, that's what you do. You're scared. That's what
Yeah,
you do.
exactly. So it's just, interesting to see what's happening, and we have to see how this plays out. I mean, there's been a lot of great points discussed here on this episode, and all of them, really, all the shows that we've done. And again, there's a lot, with social media and everything that I think will be looked at, and what impact that the New York Attorney General will have, if any, maybe something to see in this instance, because at the end of the day, um, there's a lot of influence, of course, in
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media, but you have to, I think, as you said, gotta go after Facebook, and and who knows now with Elon, will the kind of will
He's
he
not
will
buying. He ain't buying Twitter. He's capping. That's all cap. He doesn't have the money for it. I think that's like the thing that people are kind of realizing now, is that he's not that serious about it. But that's the whole other conversation.
That's all. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's a future edition of Fit to Speak. So do stay tuned for that. But no, Raheem Dawodu Jr., the creative director of Common Sense Entertainment. This has been a very good conversation. Thank you so much
Always,
for joining us today.
always, brother. Thank you for having me.
To see the first part of my interview with Raheem, do watch that right here on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/the CSE channel. And just as a bit of an addendum to this, we recorded this interview right before the Uvalde, Texas shooting at Robb Elementary School. It was announced recently that the school will be demolished. The revelations about the police response, or lack thereof, were nothing short of appalling and should have cast a black eye not just against the Uvalde Police Department, but arguably against law enforcement as a whole in the United States. The fact alone that it took 78 minutes to stop the shooter, but Derek Chauvin, who's probably watching this program from his prison cell, did not waste time putting a knee to George Floyd's neck in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or the cops in Louisville, Kentucky wasted no time busting down the door of Breonna Taylor, speaks volumes. The supposed good guy, or guys with a gun in Uvalde, Texas, those wearing blue, just stood there. Is that the true definition of protect and serve? Not in my mind. Let me make it clear in plain English, folks. The actions of the cops in Uvalde, Texas, a jurisdiction in which 40% of the budget goes to their police department, are nothing short of deplorable. And I hope that the parents of the children who were killed in this sue the daylight out of that police department and every officer in it. Though, if Texas law and the doctrines of sovereign and qualified immunity are anything to go by, the justice may sadly be an uphill climb. Folks, we continue to need your help in finding broadcast industry professional and University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, who's been missing since October of 2018. If you have any information as to Terrence's whereabouts, you're asked to call the Idaho County Sheriff's Office at 208-983-1100. That's 208-983-1100. You can also reach out to us on our social media accounts, which you'll see at the end of the program, and we'll pass any information along to them. As mentioned at the top of this program, this June 2022 edition is our summer finale. But don't you worry, because this show, Fit to Speak, which I hope you've enjoyed for the past 2 years, is not going the way of the dinosaur. We'll return the day before Thanksgiving, Wednesday, November 23rd, with all new editions. But what if I told you that you did not have to wait for that long? A well-educated populace is critical to the functioning of our democracy. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And when you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Let the reflection begin. Fit to Speak from the Archives will indeed make its debut Friday, July 29th, and unlike this regular version of Fit to Speak, you're not going to have to wait until close to the end of every month for new shows. We're going to run Fit to Speak from the Archives every week from the 29th until about the end of October. The conversations we've had in our first season, which was exclusively on Vimeo, from the handling of the novel coronavirus pandemic to cancel culture, to student journalism, and many other topics, including the launch of a new national podcast on the maker economy in Maine, remain very much relevant today. So I hope you'll be able to join us right here on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/the channel. Do hit that subscribe button for me right now and ring the bell so that you are notified when our videos drop. Finally, we will launch both a Substack and Patreon page for you to support what we're doing here at Common Sense Entertainment and this news division, CSE Media, on a greater level. Starting with Substack, beginning July 5th, csemedia.substack.com will be the home for much of our news division's content. We will, through video and the power of the written word by yours truly, and hopefully down the line other contributors, use Substack to enhance the conversations that we have on the regular editions of Fit to Speak, as well as Fit to Speak from the Archives. Much of the content we will place on Substack, including links to Fit to Speak from the Archives, will be on the free subscription tier, but we will offer paid subscription tiers as little as $5 a month, in which exclusive content will be provided and the opportunity for you to take part in the monthly Zoom forum that I will facilitate. And for those of you living in the DMV where we tape this program that support on the highest tier, you'll have all of that, plus you'll get to have dinner with my team and I. So I hope you'll consider joining us on Substack and or on patreon.com/Common Sense Entertainment, where you can, for as little as $3 a month, provide overall support to both the news and entertainment content that we produce, the latter of which we will have more for you of later this year in the form of a brand new food show. Slow and steady ultimately wins the race. And I believe that in some ways we are already winning. I think that this program has represented and has proven that quality, fact-based discussion on issues of importance to the public, on issues that people care about, and based on facts, not feelings, not emotion, is the way forward. And it has been gratifying to see the level of support that people have provided to this program. And on behalf of the team here at Common Sense Entertainment and CSE Media, I want to thank you all for your support, and let's keep that going. You know, we want to build up the ecosystem for independent content creators, not just in the DMV, but hopefully beyond down the line. And we want to also provide opportunities for students throughout the DMV, especially those at the University of Maryland, the Journalism School, and elsewhere, to really have the opportunity to do the kind of quality, fact-based journalism that is so needed, especially in these times, and especially in light of all of the misinformation, disinformation that's spread, by so many outlets, some of which, have departed. Now, one of the stories that continues to really, really bother me, really still kind of sort of creeps me out to this day, is the disappearance of Terrence Woods, which we covered on this program. And one of the things that I think would be nice to do, especially with your support, is to go where Terrence was last seen and really see if we could really unearth more information about his disappearance. Where is Terrence Woods? How do we not have more information at this point? How do we not have it? I mean, and one of the things that I mentioned when we covered Terrence's disappearance on the program is that missing minorities still do not get the kind of attention that is deserved, and that needs to change. And that's why we have committed on this program to having the call to action that you probably saw earlier on in the program about Terrence Woods, and information that if you have any information to call the Idaho County Sheriff's Office, or you can contact us on our social media outlets. We need to continue to pay attention to the Terrence Woods case and help find him and help bring him home. So I hope that you will support us on Substack or Patreon and really support this stuff, because again, doing a show like this and with the kind of ideas that my team and I have for this program and the kind of reporting that we want to do, and especially on the Terrence Woods case and so many other things that we think are worth exploring, all of this requires some level of funding. And of course, we've been doing this with shoestring and paper clips, but definitely with your support, we can really, really make this stuff really, 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 really big. And it is because of you that I think you will help us to get there. So do join us. Substack, Patreon, really, really help us build up that ecosystem. Let's do some really incredible reporting. Let's make opportunities happen for so many journalists that are coming up in this business. And we are going to definitely make things happen. I hope you'll join me. And thank you so much for watching. Listen, there's going to be a lot more where that came from, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content you'll see from today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. And do join us on Substack and Patreon so that you can support all of the work that we do here. And we are going to, again, make some stuff happen big time right here, folks. And I will see you in July for Fit to Speak from the Archives. I hope to catch you then. And we'll be back with this program in November. So until then, I'm Eugene Obah. And remember, we will not be silenced.